not fair. I feel like we're just getting a hot stone massage. We're just coming out of the show.
That's what a couple of the guys in my band say that all the time.
Hey guys, Ryan from AMS here. We're in Montclair, New Jersey at the Wellmont Theater. Had a chance to sit down with Alex Skolnick from Testament. We talked about ESP guitars, LTD guitars, the difference, thrash metal, jazz, and everything in between. Hope you enjoy it. So obviously, you know, you're on tour right now. It's probably easy to get back into the headspace of playing thrash and going back to what got it all started. But Testament is obviously home base, but at the same time, you thought, I'll take a left turn, and that was probably around early 90s?
Yeah, it was about, people forget how young I was when I joined the band. I was 16 years old, so I was in 11th grade. And I was still developing as a player.
Right.
So by the time I was in my late teens, I still, loved the heavy metal side of things, but I was also evolving. And I really developed this appreciation for improvised music, especially jazz guitar, modern and traditional, and ended up pursuing that. And that was the early 90s.
So as most kids growing up in California, you're probably bitten by the bug by the usual suspects. For jazz, I mean, what turned your ears on? Was there someone that you heard and you said, was it Metheny or Schofield, or was it someone even more kind of left of center?
Well, it was definitely live Miles Davis.
Okay, that'll do it.
Yeah. And Miles Davis in the 80s had incredible guitar players. He had John Schofield, Mike Stern, Robin Ford, and in the 70s he had John McLaughlin, and the whole Brew era.
Right.
And I didn't know about that. I knew about My Vishnu Orchestra. I knew John McLaughlin from that side. But then there's all these common threads between different types of music. John McLaughlin also played for the Tony Williams band, Lifetime,
right,
which Tony Williams had played for Miles in the late 60s. And then Alan Holdsworth replaced John McLaughlin. And he was kind of new to the scene. And Alan Holdsworth is somebody that Eddie Van Halen talked about extensively. And, he has a lot of hard rock fans.
Oh, for sure.
So I knew of his name. But then, I just started making all these connections. And I realized that, to understand the music of Electric Miles and even Holdsworth to a certain extent, you needed a foundation in jazz knowledge and traditional jazz. So somebody explained to me early on that all those people you're hearing playing with Miles, and it's screaming guitar. I remember, some of that stuff with Mike Stern and Robin Ford. Somebody explained, well, they know how to play jazz standards, and they could play them well. So you have to go back and learn how to play these types of tunes. So I started getting into, I guess you'd call it straight ahead jazz guitar out of necessity. And then I really developed a taste for it. And I realized, I like practicing this a lot. And that led me to folks like Grant Green, Wes Montgomery, Tal Farlow, Jim Hall.
There's a million.
Too many to name,
So as a kid, you were lucky enough to have Satriani be your teacher, among others, I'm sure, which is cool. And then, of course, we were talking about Larry Lalonde, who used to play in the Possessed, and they're opening for you tonight. He's another Satriani guy as well, I think.
I used to run into Larry at my lessons with Satriani, which was amazing.
How did that come about? I mean, was it just like there was a flyer, or was he established yet when you were taking lessons, or was this, pre?
He was not established. Nobody knew his name at that time outside of the San Francisco Bay Area.
Right.
Joe was sort of what you might call a local legend. And I heard about him, but he was just sort of this mysterious figure of the best guitarists like on the block. All the local guys had all studied with him.
Okay.
And I kept hearing about it. It was kind of scary. It's like, if you really want to learn guitar, this is who you go to.
Sure.
And I had taken a few lessons from some of the local guys who were like playing in clubs at that time.
Okay.
And some great players. But I just got the sense that, okay, if you're going to go to the next level or die trying, you're going to go to this guy. That it was the closest thing for electric guitar to, say, a classical piano teacher or a classical vocal teacher, or a violin teacher. You would hear about teachers like that, that were very, very disciplined, and it was, very serious. It was like an informal college course.
Right.
It required commitment. And he was the first electric guitar teacher I heard of that was like that. And at that time, all I knew about it was his name's Joe, and he's got this Italian last name.
Okay.
And, of course, now the whole world knows who he is, as they should.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you think about how many famous guitar players that he's probably taught, and probably some infamous guitar players as well.
Uh-huh.
But you got a guy from Long Island going to California teaching you. Then you say, okay, I'm going to get out of metal for a bit, go to the East Coast, learn jazz. Who'd you hook up with when you came over to this coast?
Well, there was a really interesting connection to Joe Satriani in a strange way, because Satriani, he would talk about somebody he studied with who was a blind jazz piano player. And he would often refer to him and like all the things. This guy sounded intense. I mean, he sounded like way more intense than Joe.
Right.
And that guy, it turned out to be the late Lenny Tristano.
Okay.
He's a well-known piano player who worked with like Lee Konitz and was part of this really advanced school of straight-ahead jazz. And one of Lenny Tristano's other students was a guy named Charlie Benakos, who became this guru. And before we had the World Wide Web and YouTube videos and sharing files, Charlie Benakos would teach by cassette.
Okay.
And he taught some pretty well-known folks. He taught Mike Stern. He taught Jerry Bergonzi. He taught some of the teachers I would end up studying with at the New School when I moved as well. So, but even before I moved to the East Coast, I had started studying with Charlie Benakos by mail.
Okay.
And then when I got to the East Coast, one of my main guitar teachers is from New Jersey, where we are now. His name was Vic Juris.
Oh, yeah.
And he was sort of known as the Joe Satriani of the East.
Okay.
As far as guitar teaching.
Right.
A little more in the jazz side of things, but there was definitely a similarity. Like he taught so many different types of people, so many different genres. An incredible player. A big loss too. He passed away a few years ago. But he was a major influence of mine, and he had a huge impact as a teacher. And he was also a student of Charlie Benakos.
Okay.
Even while I was studying with Vic was doing these male lessons with Charlie Benakos. He was much further along than I was. But it also just inspired me. It's like, oh, okay, wow, the folks that I'm studying with are still studying. So it's an endless process. It is. And I always appreciated that, and that's affected me to this day.
It's funny you mentioned that because we were talking at work the other day about you hear these legends of like Randy Rhoads, and he was on tour with Ozzy, and you figure that's what he'll do. But he would like look up like a local classical guitar teacher when they were on tour, and he would take lessons.
Yeah, that's a perfect example.
Right? It's like there's no end to the road.
And Randy Rhoads was a huge influence on me from the rock and metal side. But that was part of why, because he was such a dedicated musician.
Right.
And I was always inspired by that and how he wanted to keep learning. There's a great documentary about King Crimson that came out recently. And Robert Fripp is talking about how he still has his practice regimen. He practices as much or more than he ever has.
Right.
And he talks about it. And it's very relatable what he says. The learning process never stops. And he quotes a famous cellist, and it's a great quote. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but if you see this King Crimson documentary, you'll know the Robert Fripp quote I'm talking about.
Yeah, we can look it up after. But that's the thing, though. I think a lot of people, especially if they're just learning guitar, you get to a point where you get proficient at it and you kind of plateau. How do you shift gears? How do you keep it fresh? How do you always say, I've reached this status of playing some pretty technically demanding music, whether it's metal or jazz? How do you wash that out of your mouth and go, okay, I'm going to try world music now. I'm going to try flamenco, or at least try your hand at it?
Well, flamenco is something that I think it's such a, it requires, there's a purity to it. There's, you can be flamenco influenced. And a lot of guitar players I like are flamenco influenced, but they're not necessarily flamenco.
Right.
Al Di Meola is a great example of that. He does, and it's certainly not everything he does. He has, obviously his jazz rock side, but more recently he's been doing some great acoustic music that you can hear the flamenco influence, even if it's not flamenco. So, I think you can be inspired by many different types of music without having to go through some litmus test. You can do your version of it. In fact, some great ideas have come about from doing that. I mean, I think another much older example in guitar and talking about flamenco music is Django Reinhardt. There's some direct connections to flamenco. You can hear it.
Right.
And, there's the gypsy connection. But he's not doing flamenco. But he came up with this whole other style that was certainly influenced by flamenco. And it's just to answer your question, there's always new things to learn. I mean, especially now. I mean, now we're not limited to LPs and cassettes. There's good and bad things about technology and the fact that everything is online. There's just a barrage of music online, new players and clips of classic players that you might not have seen otherwise. So the point being is barely a day goes by that I don't see something online. Like, what is that?
Right.
What maybe it's Jim Hall from the 70s, or Metheny from the 80s, or somebody new, and I just think, okay, sometimes I'll just stay away from it. Like,
right.
Okay, this is
blowing my mind.
This is somewhere else. I appreciate this. I'm just gonna appreciate this as a listener. But sometimes I think, okay, you know what? I think I can grab something here and turn it into, so I can apply it.
See, because as a dedicated musician, which I think we can all agree you are, you seem kind of interested in blurring the lines a little bit. You're not as precious about it maybe as someone might. When you talk about genres like metal, you talk about genres like jazz, there are a lot of gatekeepers there. And if the minute you mess with the formula, they kind of get angry. You seem to thrive on that.
Yeah, I do. I don't understand gatekeeping. I don't see the point of it. I certainly think there's a purpose to music that is, follows a tradition, and I have nothing but respect for that. But a lot of the musicians that inspire me are not limited.
Okay.
Jaco Pastorius, for example, on bass. This is not somebody who was a purist at all, right? This is somebody that played so many different types of music, and funk. He appreciated Duke Ellington as much as James Brown,
right?
And at one time, those were radically different categories. Jimi Hendrix blurred a lot of lines. Frank Zappa in a much different way.
There were no lines.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So, I can really appreciate, great music that follows a tradition, whether it's jazz, guitar, flamenco, country, bluegrass, whatever. But I do find myself, and it's no judgment on anybody else, but I find myself gravitating towards music that takes chances and isn't limited to one thing.
So you just know it when it moves you. You obviously spent a lot of time in Testament back in the day. What you led to the decision where you said, "Look, this is great. I love it, but I have to go out and try something else."
Yes.
When you do that now, obviously you're shifting gears a little bit more radically, whereby you can always come. Thankfully, you're back doing this, which is great. But what do you do? Let's say this tour ends. How do you clean that out of your system and go, "Okay, now I'm going to get into jazz mode," or is it just something you can kind of flip the switch?
It's changed over the years. Now, I'm constantly working on my instrumental side. So I'm backstage. Most of what I'm doing is jazz. I don't really feel the need to woodshed as much on this type of music that I'm playing on stage. Maybe just to get for the sake of rehearsal and the sake of tightness, yes. But when you're playing this music on stage every night, it becomes pretty comfortable.
Okay.
So I don't really need to play things that are comfortable. And I have a lot of time during the day, which is great.
Yeah, for sure.
And I have equipment that I can work with. I don't have it out now, but I also have a laptop and recording gear, my multi effects, amp modeler that I can record professionally, and there's it doesn't really feel that different. I feel like it's I get so much work done on what you might call jazz guitar and other styles during the day. And at night, I think I play better doing the heavy stuff because I have that other side.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. And heavy is it's kind of an amorphous word. When you think about it, I mean, obviously Testament's heavy, but jazz can be heavy too in a different way. And so when you're in Testament and you guys are playing, it's you and Eric, how do you divvy that up? And then when you go, okay, now I'm in my trio and I'm literally doing the heavy, it's all guitar for me. How do you get is that just a matter of knowing your lane, or how do you work that out?
Well, I think it happens automatically. I don't really need to think about it. One reason is who I'm playing with. When I'm playing a Testament, I'm playing with musicians that are so dialed in to this music.
Right.
And they also have equipment that makes the most out of this type of music. The riffs, the heavy bass lines. It's also, it's loud music by nature. These types of concerts are very loud. And, that type, it just comes naturally because I'm playing, I myself have a very different sound than I do when I play with my trio.
For sure.
Now, when I'm playing with my trio or packed with Percy Jones, which is completely different, or Stu Ham.
Sure.
I've got all these great instrumentalists that I'm honored to play with. I have a totally different setup. Now, with those projects, I usually have one of these guitars.
Right.
But my sound is different. My tone is very dynamic. I have more foot pedals. And I'm affected by their playing. And the same with my trio. And in the case of my trio, we were talking about this earlier, even sometimes there's upright bass. And sometimes the drums are played with brushes.
Right.
And, I am not going to play like I do with Testament when I'm on stage with musicians that are playing that dynamically and that intricately. It's going to draw something different out of me that hopefully fits with what they're playing.
So you're reading the room essentially. I mean, when you're in this dynamic, do you ever think of, I'll slip in some, Matheny in one of these songs? Would they catch you and go, "Hey man, what are you doing?"
With Testament?
Yeah. Or would they let it slide? Or, do you find yourself incorporating some of the elements of all the other styles of music you've done when you came back to Testament, or do you stick pretty close to how they were recorded when you guys play live, or do you take some liberties with it?
I take a few liberties.
Yeah.
It's not that obvious. I think you'd have to listen.
Okay.
And it's certainly not a tonal liberty. It's definitely more of like a moment of improvisation or variation that you would have to listen for. Here's a very quick example. There's a song called Dark Roots of Earth.
Right.
Okay, so in the solo section, there's this driving B rhythm, and I do some standard licks. And then I do this. And then a bunch of other stuff. So this right here, that is a straight up jazz guitar lick.
Absolutely. Especially when you play it clean like that.
Yeah, you hear. Yeah, that's a very Matheny inspired
for sure.
passage. But when I sneak it in to this song, and it's the tempo is actually much faster and it's driving, you can't really, it's not obvious unless you listen for it. So in more recent years, I've snuck in quite a few licks like that.
Sure.
But nobody complains because it's not.
Well, it's still shredding in some degree. I mean, especially if you put enough distortion on it and you're playing it with conviction, it's still metal.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And I think, when we first reunited in the mid 2000s, I was experimenting, and I think I did go too far a few times.
Okay.
I could tell. I'd listen back. There's even a recording that we did where we recorded some of the early songs, and I think it's too jazzy. Like I think so. Yeah.
And do you like keeping it separate? You're like, I actually, instead of incorporating this here, I do want to keep that over for more of the jazz side of me, or is it just comes out?
I think there's ways of incorporating the jazz. If you want to call it the jazz, that sounds so funny. Well, it sounds like Sacha Baron Cohen in that film. Why did you stop the jazz? But in that same tune, Dark Roots of Earth, there's a part where, then it goes to E, and then I do this like, like that scale right there. Yeah. That's diminished.
I was gonna say it sounds Demiola, and all the alternate picking. And
yeah, and I've actually snuck that into a number of tunes. It's a song called More Than Meets the Eye, where I do that lick, I do this. Right. Yeah, and all that comes from, that's sort of Schofield-esque.
Yeah, a little bop in there, yeah.
But it doesn't sound like it in context because of the tone, because of the song, the tempo. So I sneak it in there, but I try not to make it too obvious.
Well, it's funny. I was listening, a Sabbath song came on the radio today. It was The Wizard. And so I'm listening to that, and that's a pretty heavy song, especially for the time that it came out.
Right.
But if you slowed it down and played it on a hollow body or something, it's a blues song.
Oh, absolutely. It even starts with harmonica.
Right. I mean, you literally, it's a blues song now. You listen to it now that you think of the roots of metal. So you probably had this light bulb moment where you're like, all right, I'm going to play in my trio. And I'm like, why don't we just do jazzy versions of classic rock song or heavy songs and make it a little bit more like, Fade to Black or something like that, where you're like, or some Randy Rhoads. How did you how did you stumble upon that? Because I would think going to a metal gig, you see a lot of guys like this saying, I can do that. And then you go to a jazz gig and it's even worse, where everyone's like, prove it,
Sure.
How did you blur those lines and go, I'm just going to do it? Because you could, or because it was just like, it felt good, it felt familiar?
Well, because I realized like with jazz guitar, there's, and jazz music in general, whether it's, jazz piano combo or jazz saxophone combo or jazz guitar combo. For the longest time, there's been this standard repertoire. And, you do songs from, the 30s to the 50s. And I love those songs. I work on those songs.
Right.
Stuff. All the things you are.
Sure, all the standards.
Yeah. Green Dolphin Street. I love all that stuff. There's so much of that there. And I didn't want to do those songs. I just feel like I also, by the time I felt comfortable releasing my own music that was sort of in the jazz guitar vein, maybe I had 10,000 hours, but I didn't have as many hours like playing those songs. And I realized the songs I grew up with were more interesting to play. And I remember, this one particular melody by the Scorpions.
Okay.
Just got my attention. And before I even thought of any chords to play over it, I was just thinking of this melody.
Right.
What a great melody. What a great, and I tell the story. It sounds like I'm making it up, but it's a true story. I actually dreamed that melody. I was hearing that melody.
Okay.
But played with like this type of rhythm.
Like Girl from Ipanema or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then I realized, oh my God, that's the Scorpions. And I could put these chords over it. And it just worked perfect. So I brought that to the band, and we were like laughing ourselves silly.
It's because it's outrageous, but it works.
And it actually worked, yeah. So at this time, the trio was brand new. I was still in school. I'd gone back to college, and my excuse for studying jazz guitar on a heavy level was to get my degree from New School University, which has this great jazz program. And that's where I met my drummer, Matt Zabrowski.
Right.
And him and my bass player at the time, we just started playing around the city, like tiny little gigs, coffee houses and bars. And a lot of the standards, we would do a blues, we do a minor blues, all the stuff that you need to do. But at one point we snuck that tune in. And I remember noticing the reactions. Yeah. People stopped what they're doing.
Like, wait a second.
Scratching their heads. What is that? I know that.
Yeah.
And that began this whole idea of doing kind of heavy rock songs with a jazz guitar combo.
And the road, I mean, the well is so deep on that. To think of the number of songs you probably you have them under your fingers at any given time, and then to give them a little bit of, there's still a rock element to it. You're still using a little dirt here and there. You're using effects. It's not the purest jazz kind of thing, but you wouldn't call it a rock setting.
Well, also, I quickly learned there's a lot of songs that don't work.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, what made the cutting room floor?
Okay, well, it's, I think for the same reason you don't hear a lot of arrangements of James Brown in jazz. I mean, you have some, maybe like, funky sax player might do like a James Brown tune, but there's not a lot of melody, right? It's much more about rhythm.
Yeah, for sure.
And in heavy rock, hard rock, it's very often about the riff.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to find songs that have very strong vocal melodies. And the Scorpions are just, there's such a great well of melody.
Right.
So, another one, I very quickly arranged another Scorpion song. Still Loving You.
Yep. Oh yeah.
A great change.
For sure.
I didn't even reharmonize. That's how it actually goes. I just kind of colored the chords. Yeah, and the way we do it with the band, it's in 6/8.
Okay. No more
So-
swing to it, yeah.
Yeah, that happened pretty quickly, and then actually Ozzy has a lot of great melodies.
His vocal lines they get tattooed into your brain. I mean, people say
Yeah.
what you want about Ozzy, but I always thought he was a fabulous singer. I love the hooks of some of those choruses are amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So the first tune by him. I haven't played this in a long time. There it is.
Yep. Goodbye to Romance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities to sneak in cool jazz chords.
Can you think of one that didn't work? Like maybe recently you're like, all right, we're going to do, Rain in Blood. I don't know, something that,
Yeah, none of those would work.
Yeah.
Well, I've done, I did a version of Practice What You Preach with Testament,
Sure.
but it's hard. It was hard to make it recognizable. And it's
right.
more of a riffy, like a Latin groove. And I found our tunes really hard to do. Most tunes in the kind of thrash genre are hard to do. But Metallica Fade to Black was a good example.
It's so melodic,
That did work, yeah.
Right. That's pretty
Yeah,
wild.
because it's got a great melody. But
All
it's all about the melody. This one was great.
Oh, yeah.
And then we somehow we reharmonized that. So yeah, I gotta brush up on these.
But it allows you to be the guitar player and the singer at the same time. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
it's a great luxury to have.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's how that started happening. More recently, I'm doing more original songs.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then, I like to mess around with chord melodies and find songs that work. I recently started working on this one. It's not a heavy rock tune, but.
Tom Petty.
Yeah. Oops, I need 2, 3. Yeah, so
But that works.
That's a work in progress.
But I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, you think of like a dyed-in-the-wool classic rock song, and then you're immediately it's that song.
Everybody recognizes.
But you
it,
see,
yeah.
do you see where the light bulb goes off, where people go, "Oh, I know what he's doing."
Yeah, exactly. And I think in the 40s and 50s, people had that reaction when folks would do songs from Broadway shows. I Got
Cole
Rhythm,
Porter.
right, Cole Porter, all those great classics.
Right.
But my generation and subsequent generations, we didn't really grow up on those songs.
Our parents did maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Unless
Right.
we heard our parents playing. And I still love those songs. I think that's a foundation. It's important to learn, but I don't feel a need to record those songs or make them a key part of my repertoire.
Okay.
Every now and then I'll play them at a gig. There's a great 7-string jazz guitarist named Ron Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I just hit it off for some reason. And we've been playing some gigs together, just as duo.
So you on
in the
6,
city.
him on 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he likes to do a lot of those songs. So we're doing it. And it's great practice. And
Does it kick your ass a little bit? Do you feel
it
like
does. And
Yeah.
I really enjoy doing it. So
Mhm.
I've incorporated it more into, what I do. But I don't feel the need to release an album, Alex Skolnick does the standards.
Yeah.
I may sneak one in here and there.
After the massage music one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's switch gears for a second. Can we talk about this guitar behind you?
Sure.
So this is your LTD version of your signature model. And again, I think when you initially came out, we were talking about the Sunburst, which was more of a Les Paul.
Uh-huh.
What made you add the Floyd? I mean, was it just that you found you needed it for the Testament stuff, or was it just you enjoy?
Yeah, actually, I avoided having a Floyd for a long time.
Yeah.
When in the first wave of Testament, there were a few moments where I used one. Practice what you preach.
Mm-hmm.
You can find a couple more, but at that time, just the tremolo bar craze it was out of control. And I totally appreciated what people like my old teacher, Joe.
Sure.
And his student, Steve Vai, what they were doing with the bar.
Or Jeff Beck, or,
Yeah, well, I came back to it partially because of players like Jeff Beck and Alan Holdsworth. When they, hearing it as a texture instead of an effect. With Vai, I mean, he's such an incredible performer as well as a guitar player.
Yeah.
He had this incredible performance, with the handle and then going, lifting it. It's amazing. And the problem is there were so many imitators. I think he really
and bad ones.
did something cool with it. Exactly. Exactly. So there were some great players, but way too many imitators. And I just felt it was hard to use a tremolo bar, or a vibrato bar, or whatever the term you want to use, without sounding like one of those imitators. So I during that time period, I had my techs lock them up. I said, get rid of the bars, just put some wood underneath it. Yeah. And I just started playing fixed bridge, and I only played fixed bridge for a long time. And then recently, I thought, okay, you know what? I have so much recorded music that on a hardtail guitar. Why not? I can allow myself to explore this again.
Right.
And also because it's on sale, and fans want to buy it. Some of the fans want the tremolo bar, but
that's pretty gracious of you. I mean, it's your name, it's your signature model, and to think that, well, let's move some units. I mean, if that's something that appeals to somebody who wants to play this guitar, why not have it there? I think you should start incorporating dive bombs into jazz standards. But again, that could be on the massage.
That's I'll make a note of that.
Yeah, please do. And I'd like my name in the liner notes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm sure the modern jazz community will really appreciate that.
Oh, well, they need a little kick in the ass anyway.
I agree.
And we talked that you have a new model coming out probably in 2025?
Yes.
Okay, so it's going to be similar?
I just played the prototype. It's like this, but green.
And a thinner neck?
And a thinner neck.
Like Ibanez Wizard thin, or like more like an SG
kind of in
thin?
between that and this, which is more like this is more like a classic bluesy neck.
Okay, yeah, I would
agree.
It's
a little thinner than that, but this one, I think, it's definitely the thinnest neck that's been on one of my signature guitars. And
do you feel that makes you play a little bit different? You have pretty big hands. I would think a thin neck might bring out something different in your playing, or do you just kind of draw more towards a chunkier neck?
I've leaned towards a chunkier neck, partly because I switch off a lot. I've practiced a lot on archtop and semi-hollow guitars where the necks are thick. So I got kind of used to that. And when I play electric, I like guitars that sound good for blues. I always had a bit of a blues foundation.
Who doesn't? It's kind of hard to get away from it.
We kind of all do.
Yeah.
And I always wanted a guitar that would work really well for blues. So I leaned towards necks that are a bit thicker than the super strats or the shred machines.
Sure.
This one is a little thinner. It's kind of in that direction. And I just played the prototype and approved it. And I'm really excited about it. Yeah. I'm sorry I don't have it here.
No worries. I mean, we're excited to get it. It will be LTD, or will it be ESP?
It's LTD. Okay. I'm sure you can get an ESP version of it.
Got it.
I'm going to order one for sure.
Oh, as you should.
But I do have an ESP USA guitar that partly inspired this upcoming LTD guitar.
Okay. That's well, and so we'll leave it with this. So obviously, Eric being more of an EMG guy, you've always gravitated towards more of a passive sound, almost regardless of the genre that you're playing. Any particular reason for that? Or you feel like you can get more out of it, or is it just something you did and you thought nothing of it?
Yeah, I like dynamics.
Okay.
And I feel like I'm not I don't gravitate towards active pickups for the same reason I don't gravitate towards noise gates.
Okay.
Right? It's really about playing at one dynamic. And that can be great, but I'm a huge fan of dynamic players. Our biggest influence in heavy rock, pretty much everybody, it's undeniable, is Eddie Van Halen. He changed equipment, he changed guitars, he changed amps, he changed playing styles, he changed tones. But, you could really hear the dynamics with his playing. He would bring down the volume knob. He would get real quiet, and then he would do stuff like,
oh yeah.
Right, bringing up, I'm on the wrong pickup, but stuff like that.
Well, even Hot for Teacher, think about it. I mean, you listen to the isolated tracks, it's blazing, and then he just turned the volume down for that clean part.
Yes.
And it was still him. And he's like, well, I don't have to overdub another guitar for that. I'll just do it with my hands.
Yeah, so I like that quality, and I just feel like passive pickups bring out that quality. And I have a signature set of pickups made by Seymour Duncan.
Right.
And they're available in the ESPs.
And what did you base them off of? Anything in particular?
Loosely based on the JB.
Okay.
And the 59, the classic setup.
Yeah.
And JB is named after Jeff Beck. That's another very dynamic player, right?
Boy, yeah.
He'll play so quietly you can almost hear a pin drop.
Yeah.
And then bring it up, and then it has such an effect on you. That would not work on an active pickup.
No.
What he does, that wouldn't work with a noise gate. Mm-hmm. So nothing against music that has that.
Right.
I'm also a fan of Rammstein.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I think that music needs. Yeah, I don't know for a fact they use active pickups. But
Pretty sure they do. Yeah.
I would guess they do.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And I would definitely guess they use noise gates because the
the amount of gain. Yeah.
The gain and then the quiet in between the riffs.
Right.
So and I love that. That's just a different thing. So for what I do, I feel like active just doesn't work as well.
And you seem to enjoy the warts and all aspect of me. As technically proficient as you are, I think you also enjoy that period of where it could go off the rails a little bit. You could make a mistake, but you could bounce back from that, Yeah. I think there's something to that. That takes guts.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, Van Halen was the first virtuosic guitarist that drew me in.
Right.
And he had that. He had that quality. Like I think he even mentioned that in interviews. Like he would compare it to falling down the stairs.
And landing on your feet.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But it had that dangerous quality. And that's why I like so much improvised music, whether it's jazz rock or world fusion or, whatever you want to call it.
Well, it's funny. I was watching, and we'll leave you on this one, Culture Shock. When I hear you play that, first of all, great title for a song. I mean, it sounded like 4 different genres in one. Where you could be playing it on a telly or a semi-hollow. But I mean,
I did sneak a telly into the recording.
I thought you might have.
Yeah.
So like if I were to put a telly
purchased at Groon Guitars in Nashville, like a very authentic.
So a different paintbrush will kind of bring out that, but it's still you playing it, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that feels very natural. And I'll just say finally too, I get a lot of questions about LTD versus ESP.
Sure.
And by the way, the reason my name is not on there is because this guitar got stolen. There's a New York Times story about this guitar theft that you can look up. But anyway, thanks to the guys at Sam Ash for recovering it. But the thief tried to cover up my name. So
smart move.
Yeah, in fact, there's a guitar here that has the signature. So normally,
all right, there you go.
It looks like this. on the ESPs. But
how did you get it back? They just knew it when they saw it?
One of the guys that worked there recognized it.
Yeah.
And I think I forget if it was this one or one of the others, but yeah, it has a serial number. It ends in 01.
Oh, all right.
Oh, that's the pro. That's a
yeah. That's a giveaway.
Like one of the first ones.
Yeah.
And then he asked the guy a question, like how he got it, and the story didn't add up. And
yeah,
thanks to the NYPD did a sting operation and got the guy to come back in and try to claim the guitar because he had it on consignment.
So when they call you after that, they go, "Hey man, we got your guitar." Do you think it's a joke? You're like, "Are you kidding?"
Oh yeah, I was on tour in Greece.
Oh okay.
And they were asking me about these guitars. There were about 4 or 5 of them. And he's describing each one.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I have that guitar. They're here in San Matt. What? Those are in my storage unit.
Not anymore.
Yeah, and it turned out to be somebody that worked at the storage unit, which is a whole other story. He went to jail. So that's a whole other story.
Well, we could do that for the next one. But that must mean a lot. I mean, to have it back, it's,
I have it back, so this is a special guitar. But I often get asked about the difference between LTDs and ESPs, and sometimes folks are surprised that I play the LTDs in the show because they're considered the quote unquote affordable version, more affordable version of the guitar. But the LTDs work great. There's a couple different LTDs that I've used in the show. The way I look at it, there are live guitars and there are recording guitars. Okay. For recording, I'm definitely going to lean towards an ESP, especially if it's the foundational sound, the rhythmic tone.
And you're committing that to tape. It's like it should be.
Yeah, then you need the highest quality you can. But that's not necessary for a live show, especially a show like Testament where I'm blended in with other instruments that are all played very loud. Right. And it's one part of a unit, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And this works just great in the show. So people are often very, very surprised, and it works fine. And even for recording, for overdubs, it's fine. I mean, when you look at a guitar, you don't have to worry about. People go, "Is it made in the USA?" I say, "Don't look at that. Look at how the nut is cut. Look at how the fret ends are. Feel how the pots turn." This guitar stays in tune. It sounds great. It looks great. Why not play it? Yeah, exactly. It does everything you need it to do. Right. So, a foundational guitar in the studio is another thing. So there, I would say, definitely get me one of the ESP versions. But sure. For playing live and for overdubbing, this guy does just fine. Well, and that there's also that kind of the old adage of you give someone who's put the 10,000 hours in. Right. you hear someone playing through, a little practice amp, and I'm like, I don't sound like that through a $10,000 rig because it's you playing it. And so to some degree, you can make almost anything work at this point, I would assume. As long as I can find a tone that works. Right. This little amp. This is a Fender Frontman, impulse purchase. Sure. And I'm not going to record with this. I'm not going to take it on stage. Yeah, right. But you know what? For backstage, it's great. For warm-ups, it's fine. And the H90, I mean, that thing's going to make anything sound good. The H90, that is, they recently sent this to me, the nice folks at Eventide. Eventide, it's such killer stuff. And they've been around for so long. I think people forget that. They're like the granddaddy of all the modern effects that we think of from everybody else. And, you think of those big double rack studio units. Sure, the H9000 and all that, yeah. Yeah, I used to have one of those. And now, you have that quality in a foot pedal. It's astonishing. It's pretty amazing. So, then that will definitely make its way onto a recording for sure. So we'll wrap with as you said, you're in the middle of the Testament tour right now. When the air clears from that, how long do you usually kind of switch gears and then go, okay, now it's trio time, or is it world music time? What's next for you? It depends on the scheduling. Okay. Last spring, there was a window where I was able to go in the studio and record for my trio.
Okay.
So we have an album that's almost done being mixed, and that's going to come out next year.
Okay.
The next record by Testament is well underway.
Great.
As well as drums are done. I still have parts to do for that. And yeah, I look at how the calendar lines up.
Okay.
And I look for the windows and figure out what live shows and what recordings I'm going to do. But I always try to, when I practice, I want to be able to jump into any type of gig.
Right.
Even if it was right after this tour ended, if I had to go do a show with my trio, I want to be ready to do it.
Any one exercise that you could do to keep your chops up, whether it's metal or jazz? Is there anything that you do that's like the de facto warm up? It always keeps me going, or is it different stuff for the different genres?
It's different for the genres.
Yeah.
I like these diminished patterns.
Yeah.
Where when I first learned the term diminished, it was the triads, right? But then I learned, the 8-note scale.
Right.
And I always find that makes a really nice arpeggio. Sorry. That's the sound I want. Yeah. So it's a sweep, but it's also jazzy. So if you can do that and stay relaxed too.
I cannot do that. I am relaxed.
And also you can slide from one end to the So yeah, playing stuff like that and being
keeping
relaxed.
the right and left together.
Exactly.
That's amazing too, because people go, "Oh, if you want to play fast, you really got to tense up," and it's the exact opposite. Really, you got to relax.
Yeah.
And that's hard to do, especially if you're playing fast. The mentality is to kind of,
And I recently saw a video of the guitarist, the late guitarist Sean Lane.
Amazing.
Crazy shredder.
So fast.
I always, stayed away from that stuff because it was scary.
It still
But
is.
I saw a lick he did, which is, it's diminished arpeggios.
Right.
And then he changes strings. But he does like multiple.
And
So I'm still working on that.
It looked like he
but-
wasn't even trying.
Yeah. So, and he's explaining this in an instruction video. Oh yeah, it's just this,
Have a
and
cup
then
of coffee.
this.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
But that's a great warm up. So
And that's the key too, especially as we get older. I mean, warming up properly, and I mean, watching you do that right now made my carpal tunnel come back. But that's the key to stay. It's like being an athlete, right?
Yeah.
You got to be ready to go. And if, like you said, tomorrow, if you had to go fly and do a jazz gig, you could do it. Like you're in shape to do it.
exactly.
It's just amazing. You never get sick of it.
I figured if I can do that lick, I'm ready to go on stage.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
you're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to our friends at ESP Guitars for making this happen. To check out the gear that we talked about in this interview, be sure to check us out at AmericanMusical.com and be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this.